Hey there, and welcome to your own personal deep dive. You asked us to dig into how jazz and the civil rights movement intertwined. And wow, getting into this really opened my eyes to some surprising connections.
It's really remarkable, isn't it?
We often think of protest songs and folk music comes to mind, but
Right.
we're going to show you how jazz was like this driving force in the fight for equality, almost like this megaphone for the movement.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And what's so fascinating to me is that it wasn't just about the music itself.
Right.
Of course, the music was incredible, but we're also talking about the artists, the venues, the global impact. I mean, this deep dive is going to show you how all these pieces fit together to create something truly powerful.
So get ready to go beyond the expected names like Martin Luther King Jr., because we're going deep into how even lesser-known jazz artists use their music to advocate for social change.
We're really talking about a time and place where jazz wasn't just background noise. It was a potent form of activism, political education, and a powerful expression of global solidarity.
It's amazing to think that something as seemingly carefree as jazz could be a tool for social change.
But it makes sense when you think about the roots of jazz, right? Born from the African-American experience, it was already steeped in the realities of inequality and the fight for justice.
Okay, so let's jump right in with an example.
Mm-hmm.
We both know Duke Ellington and John Coltrane, but I bet most people don't realize how their music became anthems for the movement.
Absolutely. Take Ellington's Black, Brown, and Beige, for example.
Okay.
It's not just a symphony, it's a musical history lesson, a powerful exploration of Black life in America. He's using music to educate, to challenge perceptions, to tell a story that needed to be heard.
Right. And then you have Coltrane's Alabama, which
Right.
was his visceral response to the 16th Street Baptist church bombing. Can you imagine the raw emotion he poured into that piece?
And it wasn't just emotional, it was a deliberate musical statement. The use of dissonance, the way the tempo builds, it's Coltrane taking the rawness of that tragedy and translating it into sound. He's making you feel the grief, the anger, the injustice of it all.
It gives me chills just thinking about it. It really highlights how these musicians weren't just reflecting the times, they were actively shaping the narrative
Yeah.
through their art.
Exactly. They were using their platforms to make powerful statements, to challenge the status quo. And they weren't doing it in isolation. Imagine smoky jazz clubs filled not just with music lovers, but also activists, intellectuals, all drawn together by this shared experience.
So it wasn't just about the music, it was about the community it fostered, right?
Exactly. These clubs became hotbeds for discussion, for strategizing, for building a shared vision for a more just future. Think about it, in a time of segregation, jazz clubs offered these rare spaces for people of different races to come together, to connect, and to organize.
It's amazing how something as seemingly simple as a jazz club could become a catalyst for social change.
Yeah.
And speaking of catalysts, we can't forget about the icons who used their fame to amplify the message of the movement. We're talking about legends like Louis Armstrong, who was already a household name.
Right. And he didn't shy away from controversy.
Not all.
Remember when he publicly criticized President Eisenhower for his slow response to the Little Rock 9 crisis? It was a bold move, especially for someone of his stature.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's inspiring to see that he was willing to risk his career, his reputation, to speak out against injustice. And then, of course, we have Nina Simone, who really embodied the spirit of activism through her music.
And with Nina, it's important to remember that for her, music wasn't separate from the movement. It was her weapon, her way to fight back.
Mississippi Goddamn wasn't just a song, it was a battle cry.
And it's a great example of how jazz wasn't always about subtle messages. This was music born out of frustration, out of a deep desire for change, and she expressed that with a rawness that resonated deeply with people.
She was a force to be reckoned with, that's for sure. It's remarkable how these artists didn't just entertain. They challenged, they provoked, they inspired a generation to fight for their rights.
And their impact wasn't confined to the stage. You have to think about the energy of those civil rights marches with jazz as the soundtrack urging people forward. Jazz wasn't just a reflection of the movement, it was a driving force.
And this brings us to a fascinating part of our deep dive. You see, jazz's influence wasn't limited to the U.S. As the music spread internationally, it became intertwined with other freedom movements around the world. It was like a musical ambassador for the cause of equality.
It's like jazz carried this universal message of freedom and resistance that resonated with people fighting oppression everywhere.
Right.
And to illustrate this point, let's look at South Africa during apartheid. It's incredible to think about how jazz, a genre born from the African-American experience, found a home in the hearts of those battling apartheid thousands of miles away.
It really speaks to the unifying power of music, would you say? But back to South Africa for a second. Do you have any specific examples of how jazz intertwined with their struggle for freedom?
Absolutely. The name Miriam Makeba comes to mind. She wasn't just a singer, she was a voice for the voiceless. Her music became a powerful symbol of resistance against apartheid. She used her platform to speak out against injustice and bring international attention to the atrocities happening in South Africa.
Wow. It's amazing how music can transcend borders and create these connections across cultures. It gives me chills thinking about the impact she must have had. Her music probably brought solace and strength to those fighting for their rights.
It's truly remarkable. And, thinking about her story reminds me of another powerful example, Max Roach's We Insist, Freedom Now Sweet.
Oh, I've heard of that one. It's a powerful piece of music, that's for sure. Can you tell us a little more about it?
It's not just music, it's a political statement. Roach's work directly addressed the struggles of African Americans during the civil rights movement, but he didn't stop there. He made a conscious effort to draw parallels to other global freedom movements, including the fight against colonialism in Africa.
Wow, so he was using his music to connect these struggles, to show that the fight for freedom and equality was a global one.
Precisely.
Yeah.
He recognized that these struggles, while happening in different corners of the world, were all connected by the shared desire for justice and equality.
It must have been a source of inspiration for so many people fighting for a better world. Speaking of powerful messages, we can't forget about Billie Holiday and her haunting rendition of Strange Fruit.
That song is a gut punch, isn't it? It's incredible how she took a song about lynching and turned it into an anthem for the anti-lynching movement. It laid bare the horrors of racial violence in a way that words alone couldn't achieve. Her raw emotion, the pain in her voice, it's impossible to ignore.
She wasn't afraid to confront the darkness, the ugliness of racism head-on. It's a testament to her courage, to her commitment to using her voice to speak truth to power.
Absolutely. And speaking of courage, Dizzy Gillespie, the man, was a legend on the trumpet, but he also understood the power of his platform off the stage. Remember when he decided to run for president in 1964?
Wait, Dizzy Gillespie ran for president? I had no idea.
It was largely symbolic, of course, but still a brilliant move. His campaign was less about winning and more about using his platform to shine a light on the issues he cared about. He campaigned on a platform of racial equality, unity, and reform.
I love that he saw an opportunity to amplify the message of the movement, to reach people who might not otherwise be engaged in these conversations.
He understood that being a musician didn't mean he had to stay silent on political issues. He used his fame to advocate for change, and that's something we can all learn from.
Absolutely. And, it wasn't just about individual artists taking a stand. There were organized efforts within the jazz community to support the civil rights movement. Didn't the NAACP collaborate with musicians during this time?
They certainly did. The NAACP recognized the power of jazz to mobilize communities. They frequently partnered with musicians for fundraising events, rallies, and campaigns. They understood that music had this unique ability to reach people on a visceral level, to create a sense of shared identity and purpose.
It's like they were using music to bring people together, to build solidarity and inspire action.
Exactly. It was about harnessing the power of music to create real, tangible change. They knew that music could touch people's hearts and minds in a way that speeches and pamphlets often couldn't.
It makes you appreciate the foresight of those involved. They saw the potential of jazz to be something more than just entertainment. It was a tool for social change, a way to reach people on a deeper level.
And it's important to remember that this wasn't just about rallying support within the Black community. It was about reaching out across racial lines.
Right. It was about fostering understanding, breaking down barriers, and building bridges between communities.
Exactly. And for that, jazz festivals played a crucial role. Take the Newport Jazz Festival, for example. It became a space where people of different backgrounds could come together, experience the power of jazz, and engage in conversations about equality and justice.
It's like these festivals transcended music. They became platforms for social change, promoting understanding and challenging the status quo.
And remember those integrated jazz bands we talked about earlier? Groups like Benny Goodman's band were making a powerful statement simply by existing. At a time when segregation was the norm, seeing musicians of different races sharing a stage, creating something beautiful together, it challenged people's perceptions and offered a glimpse of a more inclusive future.
It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the most radical act is simply to live your truth, to refuse to be confined by the limitations society tries to impose.
Absolutely. And in that sense, jazz itself was a form of protest, a rejection of the rigid structures and constraints that were at the heart of segregation and discrimination.
It was about breaking free both musically and socially.
Exactly. But it wasn't just about challenging the status quo through their performances. Many musicians also use their platform to educate their audiences.
You mean they use their music to teach people about the civil rights movement and the fight for equality?
Precisely. Think about songs like Sonny Rollins' Freedom Suite or Charles Mingus's Fables of Faubus. These weren't just catchy tunes, they were powerful critiques of segregation, racism, and social injustice.
It's like they were using their music as a form of political education, sparking conversation and debate, encouraging people to think critically about the world around them.
They understood that knowledge was a powerful tool for change, and they weren't afraid to use their platform to empower their audience.
Wow, this is all so incredibly inspiring. But I have a feeling we've only scratched the surface of this fascinating topic.
You're absolutely right. And as we delve deeper into the legacy of jazz and the civil rights movement, it's important to remember that this wasn't just an American story. This music resonated with freedom movements all over the world. It's like the spirit of jazz, with its emphasis on improvisation and collaboration. It became this universal language for change, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It's like they were saying, we may speak different languages, but we all understand the language of freedom. It really highlights how interconnected these struggles for equality really were and still are.
Yeah, that's a really important point. The civil rights movement, while centered in the U.S., was part of this much larger global struggle for justice and equality, and jazz became this powerful thread connecting those struggles across continents.
It's inspiring to think about how music can just create these bridges between people fostering understanding and solidarity.
Yeah, it speaks to the power of art to transcend borders, wouldn't you agree? Music, in this case jazz, provided a platform for shared experiences, for connecting with those fighting similar battles thousands of miles away.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's amazing to think about the impact this must have had on people. Imagine finding solace and inspiration in the music of those fighting for their rights on the other side of the world.
It's really a testament to the human spirit's ability to find strength and hope in unexpected places. And, this connection between jazz and social change wasn't just about international solidarity. Even within the U.S., the very structure of jazz mirrored the spirit of the civil rights movement.
Oh, now that you mention it, I can totally see that jazz is all about improvisation, about individual expression within a larger framework. It's about collaboration, about listening to and respecting each other's voices.
Exactly. It's about creating something beautiful together despite differences. And isn't that what the civil rights movement was all about? Breaking down barriers, embracing diversity, and creating a more just and equitable society where everyone's voice could be heard?
It's like the music itself was a form of protest against the rigid structures and constraints of segregation and discrimination.
Right. And it's a reminder that true change often requires us to break free from those constraints, to improvise and create new ways of being together.
So as we reflect on this incredible journey through the intersection of jazz and the civil rights movement, what do you think is the most important takeaway for our listener?
I think it's about recognizing that art, in this case music, isn't just a form of entertainment. It can be a powerful tool for social change, a way to challenge the status quo, amplify marginalized voices, and inspire action, just like those jazz musicians use their platform to fight for equality. We all have a responsibility to use our voices, our talents, our platforms to make the world a more just and equitable place.
That's a powerful message and one that feels incredibly relevant today.
Oh,
As we listen to and appreciate the music of that era, it's also a call to action.
absolutely. What forms of artistic expression are speaking to the social and political issues of today? How are artists using their platforms to advocate for change in the 21st century? These are questions worth pondering.
They really are. This deep dive has been an incredible journey through history, but it's also a reminder that the fight for equality and justice continues. And just like those jazz musicians showed us, music and art in general can be this powerful catalyst for change.
It's about finding your voice, using your platform, and never underestimating the power of art to change hearts, minds, and ultimately the world.
Beautifully said.
Ah.
And on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive. We hope you found this exploration of jazz and the civil rights movement as enlightening and inspiring as we did. Until next time, keep the music playing, the conversation going, and remember, we all have a part to play in building a more just and equitable world.